What's going on, guys? Today I would like to address that I am a huge fan of Mr. Ballin, and I have watched all of his videos, which is why I decided to make this content. Because after watching every single one of his videos, I wanted more, and I couldn't find anyone out there similar that I clicked with, so I decided to make my own and to share them with you. So to let you know, I am not trying to copy him. He inspired me to do this. So in a way, my stories are just paying homage to him and to make more and more stories that can be enjoyed by people like me who love his stories. So welcome. This is my channel and I tell stories of the mysterious, twisted, and paranormal. So please stick around and consider subscribing and turning on your post notifications. I got a story for you today that will entertain you. So relax and enjoy, and remember, as of now, it's time to slip into a mind that's not our own. So let's go. Now, this is one of the most infamous missing person cases in all of Ireland to this day. In the early morning hours on Thursday, February 13th, 1997, Ciara Breen disappeared without a trace. Now that morning, her mother, Bernadette, was just about to make breakfast, and she went into Ciara's room, only to find the bed empty. But at this point, Bernadette, she was a little alarmed, but she decided to hold off on alerting anyone like the authorities because she considered that Ciara snuck out just to hang with her friends. And Bernadette thought this because a few years earlier, Ciara had snuck out with two of her other girlfriends, and she ended up being perfectly safe at the time, but she snuck out, and her and two teenagers, they were squatting in an abandoned home on the other side of town. And after a few days, they got tired of their adventure, their little runaway, and they returned back home. So it's basically the typical runaway story. So Bernadette, she tried to remain calm until the next morning when the sun rose and there was still no sign of Ciara. Now, at this time, Bernadette had an important doctor's appointment at 9 in the morning. So before she could really explore her emotions and what was going on about how she felt about Ciara not being there, she had to make her way to a clinic in Dublin. Now, at the clinic in Dublin, Bernadette received absolutely devastating news. But at the time, it actually had nothing to do with her daughter. Bernadette just discovered that she had cancer and that she would need intensive rounds of chemotherapy and radiation. This left Bernadette absolutely deflated and saddened about having to breaking this to her family. And she was also questioning her own mortality at this point. I mean, of course, she knew she was going to die, but not like this. So she looked forward in her mind and saw nothing but pain and suffering and the burden it would put on her and her family. So she returns home and is contemplating how she's going to tell her daughter. And then she realizes that Ciara still isn't home. Now, this puts Bernadette over the edge, and she then makes the choice to notify the Garda, which is the police in Italian, and she tells them that her daughter is now missing. So the police immediately began canvassing the local area, and Bernadette started to pray. And in her prayer, she wished that Ciara simply just ran away again. That's all that it was. And that, hopefully this is just a little rebellion thing going on, and that she'll be back home. She'll walk through those doors any moment, or maybe any hour, or a couple days from now, hopefully. But this time, Ciara did not return after a few days or even a few months. This time, it seemed Ciara was gone for good. Now, as the investigation into her disappearance continued, it was revealed that one of the last places Ciara was seen was at a local fast food establishment where she was eating chips and drinking soda with a few classmates. In fact, this place was the typical hangout for local teens, and that was its majority of its clientele. But on the day she went missing, the regulars there noticed a strange man that they've never seen before who looked at least double the age of the average patron. Now, he was hanging around the group of teens and he was interacting with them as well. Now, this is where things get interesting. This man was in fact no stranger. His name was Leo Flynn, and Ciara's mother, Bernadette, explicitly told Ciara many times to stay away from him. Now, we don't know if it was because of his age or because Bernadette just got a strange feeling around him, but if you couldn't tell, Ciara was the rebellious type, and she didn't take what her mom said to heart at all. She totally ignored the order of not seeing him. And eyewitnesses at the restaurant claim Leo and Ciara seemed quite close. And remember hearing Leo ask if he could see Ciara later in the day. And this is when Ciara replied that she would sneak out after her mother went to bed. After this, forensic evidence from Ciara's home indicated that she followed through on the promise of sneaking out. This was found because there was no forced entry, and there was one window that had been opened from the inside, and the only fingerprints on it were Ciara's. Investigators were also fairly certain that she had climbed down from the window and left at approximately 12:30 a.m., and to add on, her close friends verified that she had snuck out like this on multiple occasions without her mother even knowing. So where did Ciara go? Common sense would indicate that she met up with Leo and that they went out that night and shared some time together, and maybe she disappeared after that or was taken, or maybe she was taken by Leo. You would think if Leo really liked Ciara, he would be more than willing to shed any light on the situation. I mean, you would think that he would definitely want to help find her, right? But when police went to speak with Leo, he outright refused. He didn't want to talk. And at this point, there was no real hardcore evidence that he had rendezvoused with Ciara that night, so police knew it would be hard to get a warrant for his arrest. Now, with no other suspects, the police continued to investigate Leo. And after 2.5 years of police work, they finally were granted a warrant to arrest Leo, and it was on September 12th, 1999, when they finally took him into custody. At this point, the detectives immediately began to interrogate Leo about Ciara's disappearance, and they were hoping that they would be able to get a confession out of this guy, but they were sorely mistaken. Now, the story that they got from Leo, it was unbelievable. Instead of denying that he actually, saw Ciara that night, Leo totally denied even knowing who Ciara was, let alone involved with her in any way. Even when an eyewitness from the restaurant swore to police that they saw Leo hanging out with her that day and interacting with Ciara, Leo didn't budge. Just stuck to his story and said, nope, didn't know her at all. No idea. I mean, this was unbelievable. You literally have a person looking at you saying, yeah, you were there, myself and all my other friends saw you were there. And you talked to Ciara. And for Leo just to simply say, nope, not me. Well, that's sort of incredible. I mean, there were no cameras at this time, so other than the eyewitness testimony, the police really had nothing. Obviously, the investigators knew someone was lying. A half dozen of Ciara's friends, or Leo. And it's obvious to say their money was on Leo, who was lying. But even though they felt like he was lying, they didn't actually have any evidence. They had no evidence that he actually committed a crime, that he was with Ciara, or that he abducted, let alone killed her. Then they did a full, thorough search of his house and property and found absolutely nothing. So they had no choice but to let him go. And unfortunately, he went free. So Bernadette, she passed away 22 years after the vanishing of Ciara in 2018. And she never got the much-deserved answer of what happened to her little girl, other than knowing that Ciara opened a window in the middle of the night and then truly disappeared without a trace. Now, Leo Flynn continued to live in the same area for the next 20 years, even though there were always whispers all the time that he was the one responsible for the disappearance of Ciara Breen. In 2017, Leo was arrested for drunk driving, and while in police custody, he swallowed a bunch of illegal drugs to, keep it hidden from the police. But this was his fatal error, because right after, he overdosed in custody, and on his death certificate it said suspected overdose. So now, if Leo did anything to Ciara or knew anything about her disappearance at all, then this was a secret that he took to his grave. Ciara is still missing to this day, so if you know anything about this case, please contact the appropriate authorities. Until then, maybe one day we will find out what happened to Ciara on that fateful night. Either that, or we'll never know at all.